All right, man, peace. So, brothers know, if you've been on my channel long enough, I'm on record as stating that I believe that Russell Westbrook is basically the Allen Iverson 2.0 version. Not in regards to style of play at all, but just in regards to his role in the NBA. His role in the NBA is basically to be a trendsetter, is to be your favorite player's favorite player, and to have a very strong cult of personality amongst NBA fans who don't particularly value basketball IQ. And in that sense, he serves his role perfectly. He plays his position perfectly in regards to that role and to that function. Because as I've said in the past about Russell Westbrook or Russell Westbrook, let me say Westbrook for some of his fanboys who get upset with me. He's the great action star of the NBA. He's the great action movie of the NBA, proverbially speaking. When you're home on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday afternoon and you're flipping around the TV and a good action movie's on, you'll watch it. It's entertaining. It's fun. You know that it's not going to win any awards at the Oscars. It's not going to win any accolades for Best Motion Picture. But in regards to entertainment value, it's 10 out of 10. That's Russell Westbrook. That's what he brings to the table. And deep down, even though he wants to win a championship, he does not want to win a championship hard enough to understand how important basketball IQ is. And basketball IQ is pretty much like any other gift. It's something that you're either born with or you're not. So anyway, we're going to see how things go with the OKC Thunder this year. They're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Welcome back to our training camp tip-off. We just heard from Melo. He has left OKC. Still there, Russell Westbrook.
Number for the Thunder, Paul re-ups. Can you take us through the process of your relationship with him and how you guys connected? When you think it really, you could see that, hey, this guy's going to be a long-timer for us?
Me and Paul had a relationship before, being both LA natives, having a little relationship back then. And throughout the season, man, and before the season, just creating a relationship, knowing a little bit more about him, his family, his goals, what he want to do. And it just clicked from there. We can.
Well, you guys fit together perfectly because Paul George, unlike Carmelo Anthony, he understands that on a great team, or on a good team, I should say, he's going to be the second banana. On a great team, he'll probably be the third banana. So I expect OKC to be a good to very good team this season. I expect them, as long as they all stay healthy, to win somewhere around 51 to 52 games, especially going into their second season together. They won 48 last season, which was their first season together, but they were held back a little bit by Carmelo Anthony and also by the Andre Roberson injury. So I expect them to win somewhere around 52 games this year. But we'll see what happens with that. But Russell Westbrook and Paul George, they fit together perfectly. Their personalities are very compatible because Russell is the super alpha and Paul George is that great second banana who really does not want the spotlight.
We continue our relationship. We continue to stay in contact, obviously, and he made it work.
Russ, I'm curious, with your son and with the twins coming, congratulations, by the way, do you feel like your game matures in a kind of a special way, like maybe that correlates with fatherhood or your responsibility as a dad? Like, does that impact the way at all, like, as you play?
Definitely can. I think it does, actually. I think it does.
Russell Westbrook is the first father in history who's going to have more energy than his kids. The kids are going to be like, Daddy, I don't want to play anymore. I just want to rest. Get your ass out here. Let's play. Pick up them damn dolls. Let's play.
You'll see why it does.
Brady Trantham, franchise OKC. Russ, Sam Presti said at his press conference that with Nick Collison leaving the Thunder, that he was looking forward to that being an opportunity for you to kind of take that next step, evolve in your leadership of the team. What goes into that process and taking that next step and being a leader on the team, not necessarily just on the floor?
Every year since I've been here, and I've tried to involve my leadership. I think that's something that I take very, very personal, and I think it's very, very important. From the outside looking in, you can't really tell what leadership is unless you know what goes on from a day-to-day basis. And for me, I I take that upon myself to be able to create relationships with different guys. Obviously now with new guys on our team, it's important. Different things of how we do it around here. So definitely this year is going to be big in that aspect for me. It's just to continue doing what I've been doing.
Eric Horney, Oklahoman. Russell, I know you haven't had a ton of time with Dennis yet, but what are your initial thoughts on Dennis? And
that's a great pickup for them. The Dennis Schroeder pickup is really going to help them because it'll take the ball out of Westbrook's hands in big moments. It will allow him to move over to the 2 spot. Dennis Schroeder can make better decisions down the stretch of the game. So I'm pretty sure that the lineup for Billy Donovan down the stretch of close games in the fourth quarter will be Schroeder at the 1, Russell Westbrook at the 2, or maybe even them both being combo guards with sometimes Westbrook handling the ball because Schroeder can shoot it a little bit also. So that's a great pickup for them. That's really the first time that they've had a very competent backup point guard since they had the kid who they moved up to Detroit.
And how you guys will possibly mesh on and off the court.
I think it'll be fine, man. Obviously, Dennis is a great player. Done a lot of great things in Atlanta. Plays fast, plays with pace, good with the basketball, and I think it'll be fine, man. It's going to open up a lot of different things for him, for myself, when we're on the floor together, so I'm looking forward to it.
They have a nice little lineup. Just to have Raymond Felton out there as your third point guard, you're very deep at that position. Their problem is that their shooting guard, none of those guys can shoot.
Forward to it.
Shannon Shan from Tencent, China. How was the trip in China?
It was great. One of my favorites, honestly. Had an opportunity to be able to travel is a blessing for me. But to go to China to be able to see all my fans and people there that care so much about what I'm doing over here is overwhelming.
Shows you how huge that Asian market is. That all of these athletes have to go out to Asia, whether it be Southeast Asia or China, in the off season, no matter which company they're signed to, whether it's Nike, Under Armour, etc., Adidas, they all have to take that China trip.
Overwhelming for me at times, but I'm definitely truly thankful and had a great time. So,
what's the thing that impressed you the most?
The people, just the people, how nice and understanding they are about just me and just loving everything I do about myself, my family. That's the most important part.
Russ, how critical is Andre's recovery to what you guys plan and hope to do this season?
Why wouldn't it be critical? He's the best defensive player on their team. He's an even better defender than Paul George. And once again, they were the number 1 defensive team in the NBA right before he tore his patella tendon. So, assuming that he comes back fully healthy this year, they're going to be a terror on defense.
And I think it's important, man, but there's no rush, man. Dre, once he get back, he'll be back and ready to go. It's the start of a new year for us, and we have a lot of different guys at a lot of different positions that has to be ready to step up and make things happen. But once Dre comes back, we pick him up right where he left off.
Eric Horney, Oklahoma. Russell, last year you all get Carmelo a couple days before camp. You have more time this time around with Dennis, and you've been able to spend more time with him in the off season. What is the difference between that when you have a little bit more time with a guy, on and off the court again?
What you mean?
Whereas you get Dennis in a trade, earlier than you would have with Carmelo. Does that help? Is there a benefit there to having him in and around the guys a little bit earlier?
Russell said, "What you mean?" He thought the reporter was trying to set him up and maybe get him caught up in some silly beef with Carmelo.
And it's just not about Dennis. I think we traded for a few other guys as well. That's important, and we had them all summer. Nerlens, Nadar, Timmy. We had a lot of different guys that are new and that are here and try to make an impact for our team. I think it's important that just create relationships with those guys, create a bond, have an opportunity to be able to see, how their game has evolved and put it all together and make one team.
Russ, do you have a timetable for your return on the court?
What did you read?
Press release.
What did it say?
4 weeks.
There you go.
Right. You sticking to that?
Yeah, I'm sticking to whatever comes out.
Anybody else?
Unless you hear any different.
It may be media day and a tip-off, but he's in mid-season form, was Russell. Hey, let's
Russell not going to let you ask him any stupid-ass questions, man.
Let's talk about this team. What did you see that you liked towards the end of the year about the way that Paul George and Russell Westbrook were meshing, that now they can take into kind of that second season together?
Well, Westbrook had a great season, like he's had the last few years. And quietly, Paul George had a fantastic season as well.
Well, I wouldn't say that Paul George had a fantastic season. I thought that he had a good season playing really the third banana at certain points during the season on that team. Even though everybody knew that he should be the second banana, they gave Carmelo a little bit too much credit early on in the season, and I thought that it held them back. They ended up 48-34, and really for the first 2 months they were trying to force feed Carmelo Anthony. That team probably could have won somewhere around 53, 54 games last year had they not had Carmelo on the team. That's why I conservatively give them a 52-win output this year, and it wouldn't shock me if they won more games than that.
Up there with steals, his three-point shooting was fantastic. The two of them seemed...
Well, his shooting was good before the All-Star break. He had an elbow problem after the All-Star break, or a forearm problem, one of the two, after the All-Star break, that severely hampered his shooting. So that's why I say I can't say that Paul George had a great season.
Seemed to really complement each other well in the backcourt. I think collectively their ability to rebound as a team, and then of course deflections, loose balls, and forcing turnovers. Defensively, I thought they were as good a team in the NBA. And when Roberson gets back, and we know what he can do, they'll be even better. But yeah, I mean, Paul George sticking around is I think it speaks a lot to the the credibility of that franchise. And of course Russell Westbrook as a teammate. And everyone thought he was gone, and he opted to stay. And for now, they just have to build on that, and they have some new additions that have come in. But those two right there, they played at a high level. I think their chemistry will be even better going into this season.
It's interesting what you...
It has to be better. It can't be any worse. It has to be better. They have a year under their belt. Carmelo Anthony is gone. Of course it's going to be better. They're a dark horse for me out west. Not a dark horse, of course, to win anything. But it wouldn't shock me if they're right there with the Houston Rockets down the course of the season, maybe even into the playoffs. That's why I state, watch out for there to be an upset in the Western Conference playoffs in the second round. Wouldn't shock me one bit. If we're looking at Lakers versus Golden State in the second round, and also Rockets OKC in the second round, if OKC were to beat the Rockets, it wouldn't shock me. I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to prognosticate that. But if it were to happen, it wouldn't shock me. It also wouldn't shock me to see OKC defeat the Lakers if they were to match up in the first round.
Interesting what you pointed out, because Zeke, I think they say don't judge a book by its cover, but we make the cover by the covers we read online or in the papers, and the idea was, well, nobody wants to play with Russell Westbrook. It was a big statement that Paul George made. He could have gone anywhere, and he...
Well, I still believe that most players don't want to play with Russell Westbrook. But what I'll say is that what Paul George signing with the OKC Thunder proved is that more players want to play with Russell Westbrook than want to play with LeBron James. That's really the story.
And he was on stage at that party with Russ and dedicated to each other. What did that...
And beyond that, you know what that also means? Certain players know that if you lose on the OKC Thunder, they'll blame Westbrook. Paul George knows he won't get the blame if the team loses in OKC. If he goes to LA and loses, he knows he's going to get all the blame. LeBron's never going to get the blame because LeBron's going to make sure he gets his offensive numbers.
What did that say, maybe, to the rest of the league about Russell Westbrook that we didn't know before?
Well, I think it gave Russ credibility with the rest of the players around the league, because when he and Durant had the breakup, right? There was some thoughts about, is Durant the bad guy, is Russ the bad guy? But now you get a guy like Paul George that arguably everybody around the league likes and respects him as a guy and as a player. I
don't know about that. I don't know if Roy Hibbert likes or respects him. Not after Paul George and pretty much everybody else in the Indiana locker room banged out Roy Hibbert's girlfriend, allegedly.
When he vouches for Westbrook and say, "Hey, this guy's all right. We're gonna go to war together. And we're gonna play together," right? That gives others the ability around the league to have a different viewpoint about Westbrook.
Really, right now, all OKC is missing is a shooter. That's why I say do not be surprised if the OKC Thunder and Sam Presti try to pull the trigger on a Kevin Love trade.
The big three has been kind of now what we put on every team. The irony is, we talked about this a lot during last season, their big three wasn't these two and Melo, it was Steven Adams, who has become, I think, legitimately one of the more underrated players seemingly, Griff, in the league. As good as the numbers seem to be, we still don't.
Well, what Steven Adams is great at, he's great at providing a physical force, a physical obstruction on the defensive end. He's a great pick and roll center, big man. He rolls very hard to the basket. He's great with alley-oops. And he's extremely tough.
Still don't give him enough credit.
And the point Grant made about Paul George having a quietly terrific year last year, a lot of that was being done when they de-emphasized Melo's role later in the season.
Ding! See, once again, David Griffin understands the effect of Melo. He gets it.
As they were getting ready to head into the playoffs, they were very much aware of the fact that their big three was Steven Adams as that third piece. And I think it's really significant that they had that opportunity to play that way because...
And I would bet any amount of money that if you were to interview Billy Donovan, maybe like 2 years from now, once he's had space between the whole Carmelo experiment, I guarantee you that he will tell you we could have been way more successful that season if we could have gotten Carmelo Anthony to come off the bench.
Because now in the absence of Melo, they're going to be much more of that team. With the healthy Robertson coming back, they are going to be about being a stifling defensive team. They have an identity now that will really be rooted solidly in that, and it suits the character of the players they have. It suits the character of the culture they've built. It suits Billy Donovan. The fit there is much better. It'll be easier for them to be cohesive. But I think the one thing, and again, we touched on this with Kawhi. Kawhi's a very quiet guy. He's soft-spoken. He doesn't need to be the face and the star. Paul George didn't need that either, so he was a perfect fit for Russ.
Absolutely. They're very, very similar. The personality of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard is very similar. Of course, Kawhi Leonard is a better player. But, I mean, there was about a 3-year stretch where Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Jimmy Butler, they were relatively indistinguishable in regards to what they brought to the table. And then, of course, Kawhi took that step above the other two guys.
For Russ. I watched Paul George go scoreless in college games for Fresno the year he went to the NBA. He would just sort of blend into the background. He was willing to be that guy, and then when he needed to take over, he would. Not every star quality player with a signature shoe is willing to play that role. In fact, very few do. So the fit of Russ and Paul George, in my mind, was just significantly better than the fit of Russ and KD because their mindsets weren't the same. They were very complementary to one another.
Griff, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When you was watching that game, was somebody else scoring? Was somebody else doing something?
In other words, what is Isaiah Thomas saying? There's a very thin line between being a team-oriented player and being overly passive. Because that is what happens with Paul George sometimes. He just allows himself to float into the background and his team is struggling. That's why Isaiah said what he said. Let me rewind this back a little bit.
Because
the fit of Russ and KD, because their mindsets weren't the same. They were very complementary to one another.
Griff, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
When you was watching that game, was somebody else scoring? Was somebody else doing something? Because if Paul George was just laying back and wasn't nobody else doing something.
Oh, they got hammered.
They got hammered.
Yeah, they got hammered.
Oh, well, that ain't a good sign.
Absolutely. Ding. That is why, once again, that is why Paul George knows where he belongs. He is not an alpha, and he knows that. And he was very shrewd to understand that were he to go to the LA Lakers and have one of those disappearing acts like he has sometimes where he goes 2 for 16 in a playoff game, they're not going to blame LeBron. They're going to blame him. He knows in OKC, Russell Westbrook will get the blame.
No, I understand. I understand. Why do you think the kid goes 13, right? I mean, he goes later in the draft because people saw that part of him and they wondered if he had that alpha takeover mentality.
Well, we know he doesn't. He's not an alpha.
And he wasn't really what he is now then. He grew and evolved to the point where he could take over, and frankly...
Well, remember, when he first got drafted by the Indiana Pacers, he was playing behind Danny Granger. People forget Danny Granger was a guy who averaged over 20 a game a couple of seasons with the Indiana Pacers. I believe he even made an all-star team. And it was when Danny Granger got hurt, that's when Paul George stepped into, the spotlight. He was great in the 2013 playoffs, and I also believe the 2014 playoffs against the Miami Heat.
When our Cleveland teams played Indiana in that playoff series, every time Paul George got the ball, I thought he was going to score. It didn't matter who was on him. He has a level that is every bit as good as any of these guys. And now I think because of the...
Well, the problem is that he does not have a mental level anywhere near those other guys.
Because of the fit of all their pieces, you're going to get to see him take advantage of that. You're going to see Oklahoma City take advantage of that more because they're going to get more stops. They'll get out in transition, and you'll see him really be the guy he's capable of being. But to your point...
In other words, now that Carmelo Anthony is gone, it's going to open up things both defensively and offensively for that team because Carmelo Anthony cannot play on a running team.
Your point, it scared everybody to death to watch him go score.
I'm just saying, what you describing is, I guess the perfect number two. Grant and I are used to being number one, and the coaches that we played for, right? If Grant wasn't getting off, hey man, we got a problem. Time out, right? How would Doug say it? Come on, do the Doug.
I can't say it on TV, man.
It's a family show. It's a family show.
Yeah, you need a break.
Hey, Grant, you need a break? Yeah, good. Yeah, Doug.
Quick, tell that story.
I can't tell.
Doug Collins was the type of coach that could take a bad team to good, borderline very good. But he was not a championship level coach because he was just too emotionally unstable.
I can't tell.
No, that's a good story. Hey, it's a good story about being number one.
But you know what? There's just a responsibility. When you're that guy, not only do you have to win, you have to play good. You have to be at your best all the time. And to your point, I didn't know that about Paul George in college. I think that speaks a lot about his personality and, in a large part, why it'll work. Because he's okay with being, number two and fitting in and not really having that pressure and responsibility. So it's pretty telling. But I can't get into my Doug.
I tell him. So
you got to do the high-pitched scream, though.
So I can't do that. But Grant said he come to the huddle, and he was going up and down the court like 5 or 6, 7 times.
We played 4 games in 5 nights, West Coast trip. And it's the last game, and I usually play the whole second half. And he'd always ask me, like, that timeout, the beginning of the fourth quarter, do you need a break? And I would say, no, I'm good, coach. And then one time he said, Grant, do you need a break? I'm like, yeah, give me 2 minutes. And he just... And I'm leading the league in minutes, But I mean, that's what comes with...
the pressure,
that's the
one.
Pressure of being that, and not...
Well, that's part of the pressure of being number one, but that also happened because he knew that you were a good person and a nice guy, quote unquote. See, when he tried that shit with Michael Jordan, him and Michael Jordan ended up going back and forth like cats and dogs. That's why Doug Collins did not last long coaching the Bulls, because he would try that stuff with Jordan and Jordan wasn't having it. He saw Grant Hill was someone who would tolerate it. Once again, Doug Collins was a good coach in the NBA, in the 80s, 90s, and even into the 2000s with the Philadelphia 76ers, but he was just far too emotionally unstable.
And not people think they want that, but not everybody's really cut out for that. Yeah.
We're not sure who the number one will be in Boston. It's supposed to be Kyrie, but maybe another Dookie is stepping up into...
But anyway, that's basically it on the OKC Thunder and a lot of their testimonies or the perspectives on how good their team is going to be this season. We'll see how things turn out.